Well, good evening. I would like to call to order the Stillwater Planning Commission meeting of March 23rd, 2021. I'll just briefly explain our format this evening. Obviously, we're all virtual. We'll call for items on the agenda. We'll hear staff report first, open the public hearing. Usually the first person that speaks in the public hearing in favor is the applicant or their representative, and those in favor. And then when we'll have those, then we'll have those in opposition. If you are going to speak, please give your name and address for the record. After that, after all interested parties have spoken, the public hearing will be closed. We'll ask for staff closing remarks and alternative. With that, we will begin with the first item on our agenda this evening. Do we need to do a roll call for everyone, or okay, go ahead and get started. Cooper Project Advisors, care of Steve Cooper, form-based code warrant FCB 21-01, requesting review and approval for a warrant in the form-based code area for building setback from primary frontage and location of parking lot adjacent to primary frontage at property addressed as 201 North Knobloch Street in the Transept 5 T5 zoning district. Harkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Ryan Harkins, Community Development. This is a form-based code warrant. As noted, it is in the T5 Transept. Subject property is here in the hatch pattern. You can see it's bounded by Knobloch, West, and Miller. You may remember, if you have any familiarity with the form-based code, that the warrant process works similar to what we would normally consider a variance request that will go before the Board of Adjustment. But within the form-based code, the warrant process is designed to provide some additional flexibility. And again, sort of really like a variance request to alter some of the standards. The applicant is looking at two different warrants. You can see on the aerial map here, again, the subject property as well as Knobloch, Miller, West. The applicant is looking overall at the project of taking down the existing building and constructing a new one on the site where the current parking is. Parking would come over where the building is. Because of some of the site constraints, the two warrant requests have been necessitated. Form-based code area, of course, is within the corridor redevelopment land use area. You can see the area inside blue is the subject property. That is designed the future land use category of institutional, simply because of all the church and public uses related to the university. The zoning map, as you see here, again includes subject property in the hatched area, the T5 and the T6, as well as the university zoning district, which relates to Oklahoma State University. And then this is the proposed site plan the applicant has provided the staff. So you can see the overall build out of a new church and student life center over here on the east side of the site. The west side would be grass, lawn, patio, and then parking. The warrant requests are, as I mentioned, are twofold. One relates to setbacks. Warrant is to deviate from the setbacks requirements of the T5 district. They're looking at proposing setbacks as part of this construction. With the building situated on the east side of the lot adjacent to West Street, surface parking would be along Knobloch. First warrant request would allow the building to be located beyond the maximum front setback of 15 feet due to utility constraints. Second warrant that they're looking at would be surface lots. Under the form-based code, surface parking lots are not allowed to be adjacent to a primary street. They have secondary street frontages on a couple of cases here. With 3 streets adjacent to the property, it creates a unique situation for them. Form-based code also notes that surface parking lots have to have landscaping or low decorative fencing to screen surface parking lots from the right-of-way. This is an issue for the applicant in their mind because of the, again, utility constraints. That being said, I know the applicant's agent is here. Do you have any questions for staff?
Any questions for staff from the commissioners?
I can't see on the plan because the resolution isn't great. But is there still a sidewalk on the east side on the west street?
That so that's hard to see on the slide here, but what they have proposed, and the applicant can explain it more. They have proposed sidewalk along site property edges. That'll be a requirement of the form-based code. The other requirements are still applicable.
Okay.
The warrant requests are only for these two situations.
Brian, I have a question. Does the form-based code address the location of the dumpsters and the trash pickup?
And
I see it good because I see the dumpster right there. It looks like on West Street, right where actually I would expect more of the sidewalk to be. So they're pulled out from the building a little bit.
right,
Green. It's hard to tell from the size of the image.
it is. Trying to zoom out. See if I can zoom. Just hard to do in PowerPoint.
I'm just, yeah, and I mean, we can have the applicant explain further. I guess what I really wanted to know is if the form-based code had any direction on trash receptacle and trash pickup being on a frontage like this. If we are going to consider this, I'm just wondering about having that at what is a very visually dominant corner.
Sure. And I'm going to defer to Lance Gross a little bit too, because he's a little bit more familiar with some of the aspects than I am. But overall, the code does talk about some of those type of accessory uses or accessory structures within the code. And I'll refer to the applicant as well.
Right. And I didn't necessarily see it addressed in the warrant. It wasn't really mentioned, or if it was, I missed it.
No, we only talked in the staff report about the two requests that they made.
Okay.
Other questions for staff? Guess not. So thank you for your help. I'll now open the public hearing and ask for those speaking in favor. And I think you remarked that they have one of their representatives here. And so that might be a good start. But regardless, someone wishing to speak in favor of the warrants, please come forward or unmute or somehow note yourself as such, and we'll go from there.
We can't hear you.
He's going to go get his headphones, it looks like, or get a speaker of some sort. Thank you for catching that. I didn't see that he was trying to speak, and we obviously didn't hear anything. We'll wait a few moments in that regard. I think we can chill.
Brad, you can move on. And if somebody else wants to speak,
Okay.
or anybody who wants to speak against it, we can come back to them.
You bet.
I may be back.
Yeah, that sounded good. There's a voice.
Okay.
There you are.
Stephen Ghost with Ghost and Associates, 113 East 8th, having technical difficulty. So I just ran back up my stairs, so that's why I'm out of breath. I'll just pull up the site plan. If you guys can see that, we'll go over it again. I don't know this is much better than what Ryan had, but maybe a little bit. So just to reorient the site, Knobloch on the west, Miller on the south, and West Street on the east. So keeps it complicated when we're talking to people about this. But to address the sidewalks, we do have 6-foot sidewalks adjacent to the property line on all 3 frontages. The site out there today, the church, as it sits today, is in the southwest quadrant. There's a 2-story apartment structure that sits where this future drive will go. And there's gravel parking lots on about 3 lots up in this northwest corner that we're proposing. There is an alleyway that bisects the site as it stands today. That alley was vacated a couple of years ago through City Council and the District Court in conjunction with OSU Athletics. Part of this project that's referenced in the letter is relocating that sanitary sewer. So we're going to bring it west of the new building once the current building's demolished. And then there's also, this isn't referenced because it really wasn't applicable to the request, but there's a storm line that runs across the middle of the site east-west that's getting relocated as well. So based on the utilities that were out there, the layout, the design was to put the church in the southeast quadrant of the site. I'm hearing myself talk now. So we pushed the building east as far as we can and south up to those back lines, which leaves the west side open for parking and gathering areas for any athletics. So we got the parking lot. The dumpsters, those will have gates on them. There's an elevation change between the finished floor and the elevation at West Street. So there's this yellow area. It's a ramp coming down. So there's about 6 feet. The kitchen's in the southeast corner of that's why the dumpsters are in that location. And again, there'll be gates there. So we're seeking a variance to the setbacks on the west side to allow surface parking with frontage on Knobloch, part of Miller. Answer any questions.
There was a comment that fencing or landscaping could not be done around the parking due to utilities. Can you speak to that topic, please?
I'm trying to figure out where that comment was. We were talking about the building orientation because of the utilities, but having to have the parking at least on some frontage because of the utilities.
Okay, and I may have misunderstood. I had thought that there was the part of the variance was, or the warrant request was that there would not be the landscaping or fencing around the parking side.
We've got a low wall that we're proposing along the Miller and Knobloch frontage.
Okay.
Commissioner Rickleman, can I follow up on your question?
Of course, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
As I read the information that came to the commissioners, I was reading this to the effect of, and perhaps it was just the way I was interpreting it, but I was reading this that the building is set back on the east portion of the property owned, due to the fact that the existing utilities were restrictive and there was not space to get the entire building on the western portion of the property owned. If the sewer line is actually being relocated to accommodate the footprint, then I guess I'm not completely following why asking for the building to be moved to the eastern side if the form-based code would actually restrict it more towards the west side without warrant.
Well, but if we put it on the west side, we'd have the same problem on the east side. They can't, I mean, it's not economical to make the building go from property line to property line. It'd just be too big of a structure.
I understand that, but if the sewer line is being relocated regardless, so it's no longer in the vacated easement, it's having to be relocated regardless, because where it's shown now would be under the footprint of the existing building, so it's not there currently. So if that has to be relocated anyway, why is there a reason why it couldn't go towards the other direction as to go towards the west? Could it not go to the east?
Well, part of the design and layout of the church is to have it open to the west, because that's where the activity is going to be. That's where campus is. That's where the athletic facilities are. So having that people come, I'm talking with my hands, it's really hard to see, come from the west into and see the church. And then for tailgating, weddings, having all that activity on the west side of the building where it's visible from campus and people coming into campus, as opposed to the other way around. The church, the new church footprint is wider east-west than the half block width, no matter if it's on the west side or the east side. And technically, Knobloch's not even a public street. It's owned by the university up to the property line. So we've taken everything, and all our driveways are off of Miller or West. Any of that public access is coming off of those currently dedicated public streets.
And I'm not certain that I follow that Knobloch is not a city street.
But if you go back on one of Lance or Ryan's exhibits, all our research into this is Knobloch from Athletic North is not a city of Stillwater right away. It's been used, so I mean, there's probably a prescriptive easement in place and maintenance, but Knobloch is owned by the university, and all the deeds and plats and everything we've done research on.
Other questions? Good question. I guess that then means that where we see stairs coming down, it's not the main entrance into the facility. That's the back side of the facility. It's actually, facility opens to the west.
Correct. The primary doors to the building, there'll be a tower right here in the middle.
All right.
See if I can. Right. There'll be a tower feature here. The church will be on the north quarter of the building, and the student center will be on the south 2/3 or 3/4, whatever the math works out. And these doors in the back, I mean, that's for fire. Fire exits. They've got to have them, and those stairs just to get that worked out. But the majority of the entrance will be through the front. The west side is the front of the church.
Other questions from staff?
You mentioned, sorry, you mentioned an elevation change at the back. Is there a dock back there?
There's not a dock per se, but there's this, what's showing up in yellow. It's probably hard to see, but there's a ramp system going down. So delivery trucks would park in West Street for the kitchen that's in the southeast corner of this and roll up into these service doors back here. So there's a 4 to 6 foot elevation change because it's all one finished floor across it. And so there's some fall from the northwest to the southeast in elevation and west.
So I have a couple other questions about site plan.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there is some type of a visual barrier that would screen the parking. Could you explain what that looks like a little bit?
Right now, it's envisioned as like a low 30-inch wall, something to screen the headlights and the front foot of the vehicle. The architects and landscape architects are still trying to talk it out, but one thing we've talked about is a 2-foot brick column with either a wrought iron between it with shrubs or a low brick wall.
So then a couple more questions just about form-based code, and then I've got a follow-up to ask about the drive aisles being so close to the corner, to the intersection. So if and again, I'm going to lean a little bit on staff for some direction on form-based code. If the goal of the screening is it to screen headlights, or is it to screen the vehicles themselves? Does form-based code give us some guidance on that?
I didn't really read into it one way or the other, so Lance or Ryan will have to address what the intent of it was.
Right. And in reality, I think it was a mix of both. When I read the code and you look at the screening requirements, I think part of it is more of the aesthetic type of visual look, so that people that in the form-based code area did not see just a solid line of cars or parking, curbing, and landscaping or wall to screen parking, surface parking lots would be a little bit more visual appealing as part of an overall larger design concept. That's my read on it. It doesn't, I agree with Stephen that it doesn't say it's being written that way for one purpose or another. But I think in reality, it's probably a bit of both.
And then the last question I have, and I'm sorry, I probably should have asked this to staff as we looked at this initially. I have a concern with the drive entrance being as close as it is to the corner there. There's 2 curb cuts I see, and I know that's got to be for convenience getting in and out because you've got the way that the parking is. Is there any concern from city point of view that we have a curb cut that close to an intersection?
None was raised by engineering when we did the internal review process.
Okay. And one last question about the parking. Is the parking count based on a form-based code prescriptive, or is that a city ordinance, or is that just driven by the use of the facility?
So we worked with staff to develop, based on all the uses in the building, a overall 135 space requirement based on the church and the student center.
And how
And
many?
we've got 60 spots on site. We've got a letter from OSU Parking Services allowing after hour and off hour uses of the adjacent spot.
Okay.
And I would add, for the commission's benefit, Madam Vice Chair, that in the form-based code, it sets up parking standards based on what we have elsewhere in the ordinance, and then reduces it by 20%.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ryan. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Very interesting. Obviously, we don't have any architectural renderings or drawings here, but the form-based code broadly has a sort of a look and a feel, architecturally broadly. Is this designed in such a way that it is going to conform along broadly with those types of things, given this layout and position, sort of, rectangular box? You say this is where it's going to be. Can you speak to that, or is that something that is it going to fit within the form-basedness of the space?
The architects seem to think so. They've reviewed it and said based on their interpretation of the code. And we've had a pre-app meeting where the city's seen these, and I'm looking right now to see if I've got anything worthwhile.
And of course, it doesn't speak directly to the warrants requested, but I want to fit broadly within the form-based code even with the warrant.
So it's got the base course at the bottom, the rock, the cap that are envisioned.
And just as a point of information for the commission, Mr. Chairman, when the architect submits their plans to staff, we will go through and review the architectural design for compliance with form-based code requirements.
We're not lowering any of those requirements per se. We're just giving warrants to the particular aspects they want to vary from.
That's correct.
All right, very good. All right. Other questions from the panel? All right, thank you very much. If anyone else wishes to favor, seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to them? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for staff recommendations or staff's.
So what we can share from the staff report regarding the findings as follows. Warrants are allowed in the 5 zoning transect. This warrant allows development of the site while generally adhering to the intent of the form-based code. The warrants are very specific in nature and specific to particular aspects. Other aspects, as we noted here in the findings, will still need to be adhered to, and we'll review those as the building plans come in for review when they submit the building permit application. With that said, your options are in terms of alternatives, you can are as follows. You can accept these findings, approve the warrant request as presented. You feel it could be approved, but with identified changes, you can accept the findings and approve the warrant with those amended changes. If you find the warrant is not appropriate as a use of the property based on the impacts to the surrounding vicinity, you can move to not approve the request and deny it. But if you feel additional information is needed or discussion is needed prior to making this decision, you can table the item to a date certain. Questions about the findings or alternatives of staff? Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I did not look like we're seeing anything, so thank you very much. Commissioner. Discussion, comments.
Well, I think for me, looking at the report, I was expecting to find that there were existing conditions that made it cost prohibitive to follow the form-based code to locate the building on the western portion of the property. I think we're losing something here on the form-based code by losing that edge along Knobloch. And I think that that's something that really is in the spirit of the form-based code. For myself, I'm not finding a compelling reason to support the warrant to lose that edge of a building on that lot. I could see where if there was a way that they wanted to try to address the activity with the grassy area and have maybe an L-shaped building or something that would kind of define those edges, leave a little bit of garden space, and then have the parking on the eastern side, that I could be supportive of. But having the parking there, the building pushed all the way back, I really think it really limits. Well, I just didn't limit anything. It just doesn't follow along the form-based code spirit.
Yes, this is Mike Shanahan. I agree with Jenna. I thought initially that cost constraints were dictating the placement of the structure. And as we found out, that is not necessarily the case. I haven't yet heard a compelling reason for deviating from the form-based code yet. So I'm in sympathy with Commissioner Jenna's perspective.
You know, as I visualize that corner there, they're looking the west on the parking lot, and then to the south, almost parking lot except for the military they're building there. So I guess it wasn't expected as much, given that the structure, in terms of form base, if it were there, would sort of be sitting out as a pendulum on the west side of that facility. So I'm envisioning almost kind of like what we have with the Payne County building on the corner of 6th Duck, where you've got this building that's sort of butted up against a road, but there's nothing there that gives it any setback to make it fit into anything at all. It just sort of stands there like a little silo. And obviously we can't speak to what's going to happen south of this area. I thought by setting it back at least a little bit, while still keeping architecturally the look, at least it gives it some sort of almost a welcome mat towards the position on the thing, given where it's seated right now and with what's around it right now. If there were tall buildings, 3 stories on the other side of housing and things like that, I can see what you're saying there. Obviously, people we want, but I'm a little bit uncertain with regard to at least the positioning of where it would sit, given that at least in the near term future or any future, given that position where we're right there at the corner of Knobloch and Miller.
And I suppose I should have asked this question earlier, but how true, that's probably not the right way to phrase that, but what's the status of Knobloch north of Athletic?
We can ask staff.
I guess, is this an applicant question? Or is it going to be staff or legal?
I presume staff would be the person that would have.
Yeah, I think staff would be the person to address that.
Of what legally is the status of that.
Ryan, if you bring back up your map that you had, your location map, it's got some hatches relative to the known right of ways.
So if you look here on the zoning map, you can see Knobloch right here. This property essentially stops. And that's why Mr. Ghost was referring to this part of Knobloch being part of the university and not a public street, even though it functions like that as it comes up toward Matthews.
Except it dead ends at the northwest corner of our project. You can't go any further north up towards Gallagher Eye, but once you hit the north end of the extent of this property.
It's a one-way.
Yeah, marked about that inn in that map you've got up right now. There's a sign out in the middle of the road. When they built the student athletic center, that Matthews becomes a one-way westbound just south of the entrance to Gallagher and back to the south. And I guess, I mean, I can address the concerns about moving off of Knobloch now, or if we want to try to address this right away question first.
I mean,
Well, that was my question, was that is that accurate that that the university does own Knobloch? So
Certainly not in front of the property that we're talking about. I wouldn't think.
I think I think that's what we're talking about. That's what the map shows, is they actually do own Knobloch property there.
The way the zoning map,
Can we get confirmation on that?
The question we've been asking for 6 years.
the zoning map here, which is made from our GIS, indicates that public right of way ends back here, south of Miller. But we can certainly do some additional research to clarify that issue for the commission if they desire.
I would think that would be compelling for where they would want to place their building. They would have access to the road in front of their building or not.
And that's part of why the building got located where it is. And how why the drive function off of West and off of Miller, not off of Knobloch. And I guess while we're at it, to address the, frontage on Miller and cost, I mean, it's 280 feet of frontage from the southwest corner to the southeast corner. Plus, we've got this sewer line that's in there. So, trying to put a building, facing Miller, with that full frontage, we'd have this setback issue. I mean, no matter which direction we go, because we can't put a box. We can't put a box from property line to property line and address the storm sewer that's bisecting the site, and in the east-west direction, and the sanitary sewer and the north-south, without significant off-site improvements having to be made to get those out of the property footprint altogether.
I'm kind of, so Stephen, right? Your screen on. Oh, see it all. So Stephen, are you familiar with the Presbyterian Church on 6th?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what if you don't have the other on-site building, that the name just escaped me, whatever they call it?
Family Life Center.
Sure. Is that kind of what you have in mind for this, that it's meant to face the west?
I mean, the south
side.
part, the south side of the student center is going to be a 2-story structure. The ground floor is going to have their big gathering, their hosporium, their gathering area, dining area, the kitchen, some of the main offices. Then the upstairs is going to have some of their classroom and study type areas. The church is on the north side, and then there's a connector between the two with a tower and a big kind of common gathering area.
Yeah, I guess I thought Commissioner Phillips' thought is you have the building on the east half of the lot. Why is it not on the west half, and then move everything that is not, don't turn it 90 degrees. She's just saying, you've got it on the back part. Why isn't it on the front part and then put all this other stuff behind it? Why is it that it's all, because you got to move the lines, you move one line this way and one line this way, well then move one line that way and move the whole building to the other side. Why
Well,
this?
part of it is access control. They would like to see it. They don't want to have two front doors. They want to have everybody that's coming in from campus coming in through those doors. They park people come in that doors. That way, from a security standpoint, they're not having to watch the east doors and the west doors. Everybody's coming in and being greeted at the same location. And then for the use, on tailgate type situations, having that all out front as people are moving and milling around the area, the neighborhood. I just found a rendering on their webpage. I mean, I could pop it up if you guys kind of want to see what that looks like.
And I'll just chime in, Commissioner Bobo. I believe, and I wasn't here at the time that form-based code was enacted, but I believe things like the Presbyterian Church, where you have an open corner like that, are some of the reasons why the form-based code has been enacted, so that you can have a very pedestrian-friendly street edge that has buildings and they can really be activated, and have those parking functions sort of behind and screened is more of kind of where we're trying to go with a walkable city. That's my
Right.
understanding.
I was just trying to get this in my head, like how
Sure. Yeah,
the layout.
spatially. Yeah, got
Right.
it.
Commissioner discussion.
I think, to me, a big sticking point is who owns Knobloch. Like, is the issue of Knobloch. I guess a big sticking point, but that to me would influence my decision a bit.
Are you feeling like you've got to have that information before you're going to make a decision one way or the other?
Well, I can make a decision without that information, but
Well, I mean, because one of the options, if we were going to go to something where we're going to have to make a motion towards something, one of those is we got to wait. One is yes, one is no, one is
right. My preferred option would be to table, we can get that information if we think we can get it kind of quickly. Apparently, they've been waiting for a long time.
Certain. Whether if it's 6 years, we can't set it to 6 year date certain. That it has to be like within an immediate period of time if that information is available.
Right, exactly. That's kind of, if they've been waiting 6 years for that information, then that's not good for us.
Well, and I guess my request is some direction that if Knobloch is a public street, what do you guys want to see? If Knobloch's not a public street, what do you want to see? That way we can work with staff and our client, if this does get tabled, that we've got some direction, if then to come back with, so we can try to hash some of this out before a follow-up meeting.
I think a question I would have is, if Knobloch is not a public street, then are we interpreting the form-based code correctly? If that's university owned, then I think we're looking at different edges.
Well, and this part of the variance request would go away. All we'd be asking for is the park, to allow the park exposed to that part of Matthews or Miller.
Mr. Chairman, if I may interject a point of information, to table to a date certain would mean either, say, for example, April 6th or April 20th would be the next two planning commission dates. Staff would recommend, if you're going to table to April 20th, that would give staff time to research the issue more and get with the applicant, their client, their agent / engineer to resolve the issue and come up with a appropriate game plan moving forward.
That bit of assistance on there. Well, commissioners, I mean, it seems like we've got some different perspectives and different views here. What's the pleasure of the commission? And
I'm inclined to table, but I thought that was clear. But yeah, I'm inclined to table.
But inclination, I need more than an inclination.
No,
Or I would like more than an inclination.
Sorry, I want to table to the 20th. I would make a motion to table. Do you want me to just go ahead and do that? Perfect. I will make a motion to table until the 20th.
Thank you.
I would second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we table this until the April 20th Planning Commission meeting to give them time to look up this issue on Knobloch. We will now vote.
Mr. Rickleman,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mr. Bobo.
Yes.
The motion passes 5 yes to no no's. The next item on the agenda is the meeting summary for review and possible action, the special meeting summary of March 2nd, 2021. Do I have a motion to accept or any changes that people have noted? Right.
I move to accept the minutes as submitted.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the meeting summary of the special meeting of March 2nd as presented. We'll now vote.
Mr. Rickleman,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mr. Bobo.
Yes.
The motion passes 5 yes to no no's. The next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items from staff, planning commissioners, city attorney for discussion. There's nothing. I don't know if I'm allowed, but we do have the 6th Avenue corridor reimagining thing is coming up on the 31st. I guess we might bring that up for attention to anyone who might be listening in on this. It says it's March 31st, 5:30 to 7 at Stillwater Community Center, and it's about our city. So I thought that may be relevant to what we're doing. Unless there's any other comments, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Actually, Mr. Chairman,
Wait.
if I can interject as
Yeah,
a point
of
of
course.
information, community development is working with engineering on that corridor study. So we're actually working as the project manager. So the corridor study is a study area that goes from Perkins to Western, and then from 9th up to University. As part of the project, our consultant team will be doing a quick Q&A session with you on the April 6th Planning Commission meeting. So they will be here with you virtually, sharing information and then taking input from you as the Planning Commission, just as a heads up about the April 6th agenda.
On my nicest hat.
And you are free to share that information as far as the public meeting on the 31st with anyone that you think would be interested. We have a Speak Up Stillwater page about it as well, that people can post pictures and ideas, ask questions, as well as a map where of the study area, they can drop a pin and make a suggestion as well.
Very good. All right. We have a motion to adjourn.
Without objection, I move to adjourn.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we adjourn. We'll now vote.
Mr. Rickleman,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mr. Bobo.
Yes.
Passes. Thank you all for your help this evening.